I would say it's so versatile. I mean, if one word had to describe the WSO, that's what it would be. So if you can drive a standard transmission car, you can play the harp. One other thing, I think that we're very fortunate in Winnipeg because I think we have one of the best communities. We have a community that does support the arts, and when given the right opportunities and the right things, is there. I was born in Chicago. Dad was a violinist in the Chicago Symphony, and my mother was a very fine pianist. And in fact, my sister is a harpist with the Chicago Symphony. And so there was a lot of music in the house. My father was not a conservatory-trained musician. They came to the United States from Eastern Europe really penniless. And through really hard work and tremendous personal effort, he became a really terrific violinist. He had a wonderful tone, really, as I say, very different than many of the conservatory trained people. I remember just really when I was still in elementary school going to hear the Chicago Symphony. Of course, you know, I didn't know very much at that time, but just that incredible soundscape and hearing these great works performed by the right size forces. You know, the Chicago Symphony is over 100-piece ensemble, and hearing really these great artists. Adolf Herseth, of course, the marvelous principal trumpet of the Chicago Symphony, Ray Still, the principal oboe, and I can still remember their great solos. I didn't know why. I would have, of course, much more knowledge today, but you can still remember how it kind of came over you. I remember when I was just a kid, getting out of school in the afternoon and going to hear the Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra of Benjamin Britten, and those great solos. And they even have an article there remembering Walfrid Kujala, the wonderful piccolo player of the Chicago Symphony. So it was a tremendous culture. And of course it really kind of set my course for the rest of my life. And I studied with Alberto Salvi, who was really a very fine harpist. And he was already quite elderly when I began my studies with him. In fact, I think I was one of his last students. He was a great harpist of the first half of the 20th century. And in the orchestra, I studied with Eddie Drzezinski, who was the principal harpist in Chicago Symphony. And I was several years in the Civic Orchestra in Chicago while I was still in high school. And that gave me, again, a sense of the orchestral palette and an orchestral approach to harp playing. And that was further advanced when I was at Curtis. Well, Curtis was, of course, extremely well known. They had tremendous faculty. It was elite in the best sense of the word. It's a difficult place. It's not a common place. Very high standards. You know, I can still recall a recital that Rudolf Serkin gave was tremendous. A masterclass of Rostropovich, those things stand out. There's my parchment up on the wall. You know, few people get in and fewer actually graduate. It's with great demand. You have to work very hard. And, you know, it was the opportunity for the educational experiences. I studied with Marilyn Costello. She was an outstanding harpist of the Salzedo school, and really great player, very different. In Chicago, Alberto Salvi, they all studied with Hasselman, who was a great, kind of the granddaddy of them all. but it was a very different style, much lighter playing. And at Curtis, I mean, that's the thing, it was a really celebrated faculty, and you heard other disciplines, other instruments, and great proponents. John Delancey, for example, the principal, was there. And, you know, these things come back to you later, and they were really top-notch professionals. Yep. Salzedo was really all about the sound. Very, very musical. He said the first rule is that there are no rules. So while some people, I think, have misunderstood his system, that it was dogmatic, it really wasn't. He was looking for a complete artistic expression and a technique that could deliver that. So there are different things in the technique that, you know, he advanced. You know, he had many great disciples. Ella Shalifo in Cleveland, Edna Phillips, who was the predecessor of Marilyn in Philadelphia. And they were all outstanding musicians. So the gut strings are made by twisting this membrane from a certain sheep's intestine. And the interesting thing is that the same people who make tennis strings, tennis rackets, also make harp strings. And the harp is composed, it's always triangular, first of all. Categorically, it's different than a lyre, L-Y-R-E. And lyres are quadrangular and harps are triangular. Even though they're sometimes confused. Well, the harp is composed essentially of wood. Just like a drum, it has a hard back or hard sides made out of maple, and then a soft top. That's the sounding board. That's made from spruce. The column, if they're decorated, it's just in type of carvings and sometimes covered with 23-karat gold leaf. The neck, which carries, which is the beautiful French curve there, is made out of a laminated maple, rock-hard maple, sometimes between 13 and 44 ply. And then there's this double action mechanism, which actually shortens the strings so that you can get the sharps and flats. That is invented about 1810. It follows basically mechanical principles that are shared with mechanical clocks. And today there are probably 4, 5, 6 different manufacturers in the world. And Chicago was actually the center of harp building for many, many years. The great firm of Line and Healy. They received many patents starting around 1889 and advanced the technology, the construction of the instrument to suit the American climate and the American culture. So 47 strings, and like any kind of mechanical instrument, requires serious maintenance. And a good set of strings will set you back about $2,000. Well, there are 7 pedals for the 7 notes of the scale, the diatonic scale, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And each pedal has 2 positions or 2 notches. And the purpose of the pedal is basically a lever which works through the hollow column, which has these rods which are connected to that mechanism I spoke of. And by pushing a pedal, it actuates a disc on that mechanism and allows you to shorten the string 1/2 step. Since there are 2 positions, it's called a double action. And by moving the pedal 2 notches, you can raise or shorten the string 2 1/2 steps. So if you can drive a standard transmission car, you can play the harp. Well, I remember when I first joined the orchestra, when Maestro Gama invited me to join the orchestra, I played the great standards, the Ravel Introduction and Allegro with Arthur Poulsen was the concertmaster at that time. I remember that performance fondly. I repeated that with Maestro Tovi. Those were very special experiences, special years. All those over, what is it, almost 30 I think now, new music festivals. That's why I don't have too much hair on top. I mean, he was really outstanding, really brilliant, tremendous innovator. I remember playing the Mozart with George Cleave and my wonderful colleague John Kochman. Cleve used to be the music director here. He was a great maestro who never had a great orchestra, I don't think. He certainly deserved it. He was a great musician, really outstanding. And it was a wonderful reading of the concerto, wonderful experience. You know, we've had a lot of really very fine conductors who have gone on to bigger careers from here. And that's an impressive statement about the operation. You look at Maestro Barreco, Maestro Tovi, all have gone on to, you know, good places. Maestro Decker was like an interim music director advisor, and really in the truest sense a maestro, a master. And I recall we were reading the Blue Danube, and of course everybody knows the Blue Danube, what's the big deal? And he had a very different approach. He wouldn't stop, and you know, people thought, well, like, what's happening? And by the end of it, it was a new piece. And I remember the wonderful, as I say, principal trumpet Chicago Symphony, principal trumpet Adolf Herseth, in a master class that he gave. He was asked, what's the most difficult thing in an orchestra? And he said, without hesitating, maintaining standards. And I think that's so important. And whether it's a one-off performance or a reading of a great masterpiece, you want to approach it in the same way. And that's sometimes very difficult when the conditions are not always sympathetic to that. So we try to do that, and to advance really the artistry that we've all studied for. That's what it's truly about. My work on the committee was precisely that. It was a committee, it was a team, it wasn't a solo performance. Many members who served on the committee deserve the kudos. Not only, I think, from those who've in the community that we benefit in terms of maintaining an orchestra. Orchestras wouldn't be started today, so it's very important to maintain them. And those people who worked hard, though I say it wasn't a solo performance, it was a team effort. I believe in a collaborative relationship with our employer, and I think when we have the discipline and we're united, we can make good progress. That's a good question. I think medicine is interesting. I always loved history. Perhaps something along those lines. It's certainly, you know, it's difficult because music is so exhaustive. I mean, and the orchestra is, I would say, it's so versatile. I mean, if one word had to describe the WSO, that's what it would be. It switches gears very easily and very quickly and very competently, from ballet to opera to new music, educational shows, pops concerts, and all at a very good level. Many orchestras do this, but the WSO, I think, does it very, very well. We were touring in Eastern Canada, and we stopped at a little pit stop, and this was in the middle of nowhere, like literally in the country off the highway, and somehow we left the tuba player behind when we took off. And tells you a little about the operation. And this poor fellow had to somehow, we were playing, I think we were playing Fantastique either that night or the next day, I can't remember now. And it was quite a hoof to get back. And somehow he had to do it. And it was really quite something. I don't think he had much money, and it was really quite a mess. That was kind of, these kind of crazy little moments. The first one that would come to mind would be the Chanson Symphony. It's a great work. I played it when I was in high school. It's for two harps. It used to be done in Chicago. I think it's a wonderful piece. It's never been done. We don't do that much of the French repertoire because our size is small. You need larger string sections to really get the wonderful effect of that repertoire. But a lot of the Debussy, a lot of the Ravel, we really haven't explored that much. One of the really kind of more simple pieces, the Nocturnes, we haven't done that in years, for example. It's a great work. And a lot of the other things, the Jeu, a lot of the Ravel things, it would be fun to do. It would also be great if we could do the Janacek Sinfonietta. I remember that, you know, it's thrilling. It has this magnificent trumpet choir, I mean, tremendous. That would be great to do. You know, we haven't talked a little in the history, because the history has peaks and valleys. And certainly one of the low points in our experience was the lockout. We were locked out December 13th, 2001. Maybe it was December 12th. It was 12 days, 13 days before Christmas. And this was a real watershed. And the orchestra came through that. And we had two objectives. One was that the nucleus of the WSO had to be kept intact. It could not be allowed to be injured, damaged, or dispersed, or diminished. And the second thing was that the public could not be injured. The ticket-buying public, our customers, our audience, that could not be injured. Those were our two goals. And they were essential. And this was in a time of really great crisis. The WSO had a large accumulated deficit and serious problems with planning in the future. The future was uncertain. And the reason I raise this now is because we're also living in a time of great uncertainty. Those are the two parallels. The sun will come up again. The sky is not falling, but great planning and great fidelity to those two principles are essential for a not-for-profit organization to succeed. And I have great confidence in what we call it in a kind of a commercial sense, the product. I have great confidence in what we do, in the great music, that this is something that has survived the test of time. It doesn't have any wrinkles. It has something to offer humanity. And this is also very relevant because, you know, some of the naysayers say, oh, this is dead white Europeans. Well, no, this is the music of the human heart, and that's why it has survived. In Tokyo, where this music doesn't come from that soil, there's 6 orchestras. Why is that? It's because it speaks in the deepest sense to what it is to be human. And so that's why I believe that that it has a great future. It won't be easy, but if we maintain our values and our principles to that, I think that we will get through this current situation. One other thing, I think that we're very fortunate in Winnipeg because I think we have one of the best communities. We have a community that does support the arts. And when given the right opportunities and the right things, is there.
Thanks so much, Richard. It's been a pleasure to hang out with you for this interview and spend a lot of time here. I just want to thank you personally for your musical contributions to the orchestra for 43 years. I want to thank you also for being the chair of our committee, musicians committee, and really leading this orchestra through some pretty challenging times over the years. And also for being the vice president of our board for so many years.
3 years. For
3 years, excuse me. But being a member of our board for many, many years.
Yes, thank you.
It's the incredible work that you've done for our whole community, for many years is really, really appreciated. So, thank you very much,
Paul. It's been a pleasure to talk with you, and I appreciate this, and we look forward to facing the challenges ahead together.